Good day, everyone. So we are back for another educational video, okay, which is focused on determining progress towards the attainment of learning outcomes. So this is another topic in assessment in learning. This is Miss Rizame Arguera, your professor for today's discussion. Before we begin, I would like to emphasize that this is outcomes-based education that with a change of instruction from content to learning outcomes as previously discussed by yours truly, and you can check it in the playlist of this video, there is a need to redefine the important keywords or common terms used to determine the progress of students towards the attainment of learning outcomes, which is the focus of our topic for today's discussion. So the following terms which I am referring to include measurement, assessment, and evaluation. So here are the expected learning outcomes of our discussion. Firstly, you are expected to distinguish among measurement, assessment, and evaluation. Secondly, explain the various approaches to assessment, and here are the following: assessment for, assessment of, and assessment as learning. Okay, so now, dear students, before we proceed to our topic, I would like to ask you of what is the goal of teaching and learning? Okay, what is the goal of teaching and learning process? So take a look to the image attached to this slide. So there are two words being emphasized, right? So the the word teach and if it is flipped, as you can see, the word learn appears. So what does this mean? What does this image would like to emphasize? So basically, uh, these words, class, are interrelated and interconnected with each other. Since learning is a two-way process wherein the one who teaches also learns, and the one who learns can also be able to teach. However, please be reminded that the process would not be realized without familiarizing ourselves to important key terms. Okay? Remember, knowing the following key terms or the common key terms help us bridge gaps, help us to bridge lapses in education. Okay, so let us start with the common term, which is measurement. Okay, so measurement is the process of determining or describing the attributes or characteristics of physical objects, generally in terms of quantity. This means, class, that it is quantifiable. Simply, it deals with numerical or numbers. Take note that in the field of education, the quantities and qualities of interest are abstract, cannot be touched, or even cannot be seen, which makes the process of measurement more difficult. Hence, the need to specify the learning outcomes to be measured. Okay, for example, the knowledge of the subject matter is often measured through standardized test results. So in this case, the measurement procedure is testing. Okay, so testing, class, is defined as the most common procedure in measuring students' knowledge of the subject matter. Aside from that, we can also ask a group of experts to rate the learners or even the teacher's knowledge of the subject matter by asking a group of experts in a scale of 1 to 5 with 1 being the lowest and 5 as the highest. So what am I talking about is called perception. So the procedure perception talks about the student's knowledge of the subject matter that is measured by asking group of experts from in a scale of 1 to 5. So, yon. Aside from that, please bear in mind that there are two types of measurement, which include objective and subjective measurement. So let us talk about the first type, which is objective measurement or the testing. Okay, it is defined as something that is measured consistently. Okay, it is also measurement. These are measurements that do not depend on the person or individual taking the measurements. So it typically is the most stable measurement because it will produce the same outcome even if you repeat and repeat and repeat the process. One good example of this class is the multiple choice type, true or false. Okay, short short type answers. Okay, of test in which there is only one given correct answer in a certain item, regardless of the student or the learner who answers the question, or regardless of the teacher, the professor, the instructor who checks, okay, the test. However, take note that there are facets of quantity or quality of interest that cannot be successfully covered by it. That is why we have the subjective type of measurement. So when we talk about subjective type of measurement, this is dependent on the perception of the one doing the rating. So meaning it is unstable. Okay. So if objective measurement is the testing itself, the subjective measurement now class is the perception itself. Unlike objective kasi, this is mainly dependent on the assessor. So for you to understand better, I'll provide an example. Um, Say for example, the student's performance in a play, or let's say checking essays. Thus, it depends on the assessor, okay, the rater or the checker who rates it. Remember that humans have different perception. So it is given that one assessor could have a different rating to another assessor even if the same quantity or quality is being measured. Take note that rubric is advisable to be utilized in this type of measurement. And I would like to share my practice class in checking essays, since essay is a good example of subjective measurement. Now, um, as assessor, okay, or checker of the essays of my students or you as my students, I don't usually look at your names when I check your essays. Okay? Bagkus ang ginagawa ko, I just merely check the outputs. I don't usually look at the name of the student that I am checking. So that is a good practice, okay, in checking essay. So if you'll become an educator, do it. Okay, it is tawag dito effective. Now let us proceed to measuring indicators, variables, and factors. Let's deal first with variable. So when we talk about variable, this is a quantity or function that may assume any given value or set of values. So This is an educational variable denoted by an English alphabet like X. So, educational variable is measurable characteristic of the student. So, it may be directly measurable, like what I mentioned a while back in variable, that it can be denoted with um, the alphabet letter X. Okay, so an example is X can be denoted, okay, by the age of the student, the height of the student. So most often, class, it cannot be directly measured. Okay, an example of this one is X is equal to class participation of the student. So let us move on to indicators. These are building blocks of educational measurement. So upon which all other forms of measurement are built. So aside from that, these help measure characteristics where direct measurement are not available. So remember, class, that a group of indicators constitute a variable. So they were introduced when direct measurement are not available. Okay? So an indicator or I denotes the presence or absence of a measured characteristic. Okay? For instance, okay, for the variable class participation, we will represent it with capital letter X, as you can see in your screen. We can let the eyes, or what we call indicators, represent the participation of student in recitation, and the total number of recitation as represented by small letter n. So, then let X equals the sum of the eyes divided by the small letter n, or the recitations, or let the class participation X equals the sum of participation of the student in recitation, or eyes, divided by the total number of recitation, or small letter n. So it will be X is equal to sum of eyes divided by n. Thus, if there were the 10, okay, recitations, and the students participated in 5 of these 10, then X is equal to 5 divided by 10, or 50%. So the class participation will be 50%. Okay? So that is about indicators. Finally, we have factors. Factors, okay, are a group of variables form a construct or factor. So take note, class, that again, a group of variables, a group of variables form a construct or factor. So it is formed through a group of variables, and the variables which form a factor correlate highly with each other but have low correlations with variables in another group. For instance, the following were measured in the battery of tests. So, X1 is equal to computational skills, X2 reading skills, X3 vocabulary, X4 logic and reasoning, X5 sequences and series, X6 manual dexterity. So these variables, class, can be grouped as mentioned earlier to form construct or factor. So, let's group them in order for us to be able to form a factor na sinasabi ko. So, ayan. So we have the first factor or group 1, which is the psychomotor ability factor, which include X6, the manual dexterity. Okay. We also have the group 2, okay, which comprises the language ability factor, which include the X2 on reading skills, X3 vocabulary, and X4 logic and reasoning. Okay. We also formed a group on mathematical ability factor, which include X1 on computational skills and X5, okay, sequences and series. Bear in mind, dear learners, okay, that in educational measurement, we shall be concerned with indicators, variables, and factors of interest in the field of education. So that is all about, okay, the variables, indicators, and factors.